Politicians have made such a mess of things lately that it's all too easy to highlight what's going wrong with the country. But tomorrow, we'll remember one of Britain's greatest feats.
This is London. The Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Winston Churchill.
Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender.
Dare I ask what the heroes of World War II would think of Britain today? I mean, I don't even want to go down that route because, frankly, it's not the time. But next week marks 80 years since victory in Europe, the moment the Allies defeated Nazi Germany to end 6 years of fighting that saw nearly 400,000 British military personnel and 60,000 civilians die for the cause. As Sir Winston Churchill declared 5 years earlier, we would never surrender.
We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
And he was right, wasn't he? The good people of this great nation never surrendered. They fought to the bitter end for their lives, their children's lives, their great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. And for us too, living today, and for those who will come after us when we've gone. VE Day, of course, wasn't the end of the war. Japan still needed dealing with in the Pacific, and it would be another 4 months before Hiroshima and Nagasaki proved the final straw for the Japanese. But in May 1945, Britain celebrated its greatest victory. Battle-worn Brits took to the streets for parties and celebrations that went on long into the night time. From the rationing and civil defence to food production, the evacuation of children, factory workers, farmers and more. Civilians from all over the country played their part in what was dubbed a people's war against Hitler's forces. And as King George said on his VE Day speech 80 years ago,
let us remember those who will not come back. Their constancy and courage in battle, their sacrifice and endurance in the face of a merciless enemy. Let us remember the men in all the services and the women in all the services who have laid down their lives. We have come to the end of our tribulation, and they are not with us at the moment of our rejoicing.
Have you been getting a load of spam in your email recently? What about random calls? It's really annoying, isn't it? Data brokers are out there collecting your personal information. Anything from your email, your full name, your address, and even your political affiliation. Cyber criminals can even use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick people into sending them money. And it gets even worse. People out there are getting huge loans taken out in their names without even knowing about it. But don't worry, because the sponsor of this video, Incogni, can help. They reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information is removed from their databases. Incogni continues to make sure that your data is removed automatically from the internet via repeated removal requests. So, how can you get started? Well, step 1, hit the link in the description, create an Incogni account and tell us whose data you'd like removed. Step 2, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf. Step 3, sit back, relax and watch Incogni work. They will update consistently so you know when your data has been removed. Incogni is risk-free for 30 days, so you can try it for yourself and you'll get a free refund if the service isn't for you. So take back your personal data today with Incogni. Use the code GBNews using the link in the description below and you'll get 60% off an annual payment plan.
tomorrow, once again, we will remember them. and will remember in their absence the ultimate price they paid for our freedom today. Well, let's get the thoughts of my panel now. GB News contributor Will Kingston, political commentator Chloe Dobbs and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Good evening to you all. Thank you for your company. Chloe, ladies first, let's start with you. Are you looking forward to tomorrow? I think it's going to be a great week of celebrations, actually, recognising this great nation's history. Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic week of celebrations, and I think that this is going to be the one to really remember, because remember 5 years ago when we had the 75th anniversary, it was COVID times, we weren't really able to do anything. And the next big number, be 85, 90, a lot of the, few veterans we still have live with us today, they won't be with us anymore. So I think we've really got to make the best of this, and I'm looking forward to seeing the fly past and everything tomorrow. Yeah, indeed. Bill Rammell, you're a former Armed Forces Minister, is that right? Why is it so important we still remember the heroes of yesteryear?
I think it's hugely important, and it's about a demonstration of respect, gratitude for people collectively who fought fascism and defeated it. And, they were standing up for everything that was right. It's also personal for me. This is my parents' generation. My dad took part in the D-Day landings. My mum was an evacuee. And their memories are seared on my consciousness. For people who aren't as old as me, it's really, really important that we remember and we tell the stories about what happened and how it happened, so that successor generations recognise what an achievement this was. How old were you when your father first told you about his exploits? And what did he say? A lot of people say this. He didn't talk a lot about them. Yeah. It's a fairly shattering experience going to war. But, I learnt about it from him when I was, 12, 13, 14. And Will Kingston, we did just recently celebrate Anzac Day for the Aussies and the Kiwis and so on.
Yeah, this was not just a British triumph. It was a triumph for the West. It was a triumph for Australia, New Zealand, the US, for everyone who stood up against tyranny. And Bill is exactly right. We need to make sure that we find a way for young people to remember this. The problem we have at the moment is that there are too many people who are saying, for example, that Churchill may have been the bad guy in World War II. There are too many people who are saying, well, the British were colonial rulers, and so they're equivocating between the sides. And this is the really sad thing. Days like VE Day are the days where we need to say, no, this is a day where Britain stood up, the few against the many, against tyranny, for freedom and for everything that is right. And there are too many people who aren't actually arguing for that at the moment. Yeah, I was watching that We Will Never Surrender speech a bit earlier today when I was putting the top of the show together, and I was sat there in the back of the studio, with tears quietly rolling down my cheek. And my wife and I watched Dunkirk, the film, the newer version, the other week, and I was just sat there thinking, again, it got me so emotional. And my big concern was that new generations, children of today, and just won't really appreciate the sacrifice, Chloe, that those people, and not just military personnel, but Dunkirk especially, for example, we're talking about it. The civilian flotillas and the boats and so on who went over. It was a military cause as well, but the civilian cause was also just as important. Absolutely. I mean, you've spoken about Churchill, Will, and I think that he did an absolutely incredible job, but also all of the people across the country. We heard there 400,000 military personnel losing their lives to fight for this country, and the civilians that died as well, and those that didn't die but made a massive effort both abroad and here in Britain to keep the country going and lead us towards this victory. I think there's so much to celebrate, and I hope that this week maybe schools will teach students about this so that the young generation can learn what happened. It also demonstrated a unity of purpose across political parties. Knowing this was going to be on tonight, I read some of the history of the VE Day celebrations, and there was a celebration at the Palace, but then along Whitehall there were tens of thousands of people there, and Churchill was on a platform speaking, and he beckoned to Ernie Bevin, who was because it was a coalition government, he was the Labour Minister for Labour and something else, and he beckoned him onto stage. And Ernie Bevin said, no, Winston, this is your day. Was that his speech on Whitehall, yeah, Churchill? Yeah. And it was that unity of purpose across the political divides, parties, politicians and the people coming together. Bill, do you think there would be that unity of purpose if World War III broke out tomorrow? Good question. Well, I mean, if World War III breaks out, we're all gone, because that's the nuclear age that we live in.
I think, to the credit of current day politicians, you know, and I was elected as an MP for the first time in 1997, on most major foreign policy issues, military issues, there is cross-party consensus. But you know, there's certainly not that degree of unity that we saw during the Second World War.
I think, Will, that's why I got so emotional watching Dunkirk the other week and listening to Sir Winston again earlier, because it reminded me, of course, it was a time of yesteryear, but also it feels like, I think you hit the nail on the head there, I don't think we'd ever see that kind of unity and bravery and camaraderie again from the people who now make up Britain.
I often try and think of getting up over the trenches and running into machine gun fire and the bravery it would have taken. I can't imagine it, but I also can't imagine in this day and age when we are so divided over politics and culture. There is no way that, for example, if we are to go to a war with China, heaven forbid, but it is not outside the realms of possibility in the next 10 years, there will be some people who will say, well, you know what? You know, China has a point. There will be some people who will be saying, you know what? The UK has questions to answer over their history. There's no way that you are going to get people, number one, to sign up for a battle in mass numbers, and number two, you'll have so many people who will not actually fight for this country or support this country in that sort of battle.
Yeah,
I think it's very sad.
I'm terrified of World War III if it were to happen, not just because of, as Bill has said, we've got nuclear weapons now, but because I do not think that the young people of this country would be willing to get out there and fight for us.
And this is on the right and the left as well.
But, you know, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It was a very, very different age. It was an age of deference. And, you know, people didn't have the opportunities, the platforms to discuss and debate that they have today. You know, there was a very, very, very small minority of people who supported the Nazis and opposed what Britain was doing. But it was a very, very different era.
Lots of messages coming in on gbnews.com/USA. Thank you for these. Julie, good evening. You said, hi, Ben. My husband's dad was rescued by one of the little ships. I think you were talking about a Dunkirk. He was lucky to make it home. We have our pictures of him in our window and our VE Day banners out in respect to everyone. RJ, you've said, Ben, my favourite Churchill quote is, we are fighting by ourselves alone, but we are not fighting for ourselves alone. And Joe, good evening. You've said, my grandfather survived the Somme in World War I and lives to 85 with PTSD. My uncle Donald is buried in Venray, Holland, when he fell in 1944. They will both be turning in their grave to see what the UK has become today, lest we forget. Thank you for those. Keep them coming in.